Gets me every time.
It's fun. Cool. Good to see you guys. Coach Drew, good to see you. What's up, man?
How are y'all doing?
Sleepy today. Not a restful night after 85-mile week. I'm on the struggle bus.
I think TJ got some like mild heat exhaustion on his run yesterday, and then we don't have air conditioning, which is like,
it could be tough.
It's tough sometimes. Sometimes it's like totally fine, but
I haven't slept under the sheets in 4 nights.
Yeah.
At least. Yeah. I'm on top of the bed right now kind of person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know how you do that. I'm trying to think about how to like sleep at night without an air conditioning in the summertime, and I just
we at least now have a ceiling fan.
Yeah, we got a new fan. It helps.
Yeah, we have a fan.
Helps a little bit.
But there's definitely times where like you come back from like a really sweaty run and you're like, oh my God.
It's hotter this year, I feel like, than it was last year. Like it's been in the 90s for the last 5 days straight here.
Yeah.
Like every day it's been in the 90s since probably Wednesday of this week. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else in Colorado has been having some like unseasonably hot temps. But
there's kind of like a heat wave across the whole country, but
oh yeah.
I was gonna say I've been getting feedback from athletes in the US, but also Canada, and then I've got a gentleman in Germany, and he's also like, it's so hot, like I'm struggling. It's like everywhere. The whole planet's just like hot.
The logs are such an interesting way to go into like what's going on across the country, just because like, every so often there'll be like a bomb cyclone and we'll have like a bunch of people being like, can I run in 3 feet of snow or should I take a rest day? And then it's kind of the same thing with heat on the other side. But
yeah. Oh man, even though it was like so hot, I had like 5 or 6 athletes just have like epic weekends.
Yeah.
So some people are handling it very well. It just reminded me of something I need to write down.
He keeps Post-it notes of like all the rad weekend, like our list of athletes doing amazing things. TJ just keeps his on straight up like Post-it notes, like on the kitchen counter, which is pretty fun to be able to see what everyone's doing.
This is going to be a big week. I think there's going to be a lot of rad weekend updates.
Yeah, it was a very rad weekend.
It was. Oh man. Yeah.
It's not like during the pandemic we were like, well,
it's so good.
Such a good weekend.
It's so good as a coach to have athletes who are finally racing. It's nice to see, as an athlete, you're doing a lot of long runs, you're doing a lot of training, and you're constantly able to evaluate yourself and see how you're leveling up, right? Like as an athlete, it's always quite apparent, but as a coach, it's not always as apparent until athletes are, having to go out there and really like push towards a big goal that they have, and to see, what was working training wise, where improvements can still be made, things like that.
And this time last year, there were a lot of people doing kind of strange virtual races where it's like very hard to evaluate how someone's progressed when like they're doing 4 miles every 5 hours. And you're like, well, it's kind of a weird thing to train for.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh man, I'm not like a big fan of the backyard ultra style stuff. That wouldn't be for me.
Yeah.
It's for a very special type. You gotta have a lot of resilience to do that.
A lot of resilience.
Yeah. Eventually I'd be like, all right, well, I think I'm just gonna sit down and like have some dinner, sit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always have to do I do a lot of out and backs just because like sometimes I'm like, well, if I get anywhere close to our house, it could be game over.
Yeah. Yeah. I have an athlete who is doing like a 48-hour backyard ultra over the weekend.
Out of their house?
No, I think it was on a course. Yeah. He hasn't checked in yet. I think he's still out there.
Thoughts and prayers.
Maybe he's done and he's sleeping. I think he finished like at midnight.
That's always the crux I feel with athletes doing these like really long races. Like actually, I can say this because Sarah's on the call. Something went really wrong with your race tracking, and I was tracking you, and it said you DNF'd, and I had to get talked down.
Okay, that happened with Adams too, because with our Power Lab system, some of the athletes don't know about it, but he's on the Power Lab system, and his watch died at mile 70 in his 100-miler.
Oh, no.
So I thought he might have DNF'd, and because it uploaded automatically, and I got a notification. And then I was like, oh no, he DNF'd. And then like 12 hours later, he like texted me saying he got second place. And I was like, oh my God, I thought he DNF'd.
Same with
Like,
Sarah.
nuts.
I'm pretty sure I sent like an ambiguous text message, just like thinking of you. Like whatever happened, that's probably okay to say.
Right.
Like, hopefully you're not just out in the desert. Hopefully you eventually made it to an aid station.
Ugh.
Thinking of you. Don't die.
My whole family was like struggling with the same information as you, so you are not alone. My whole family thought I DNF'd as well. So that's like I actually did not send anybody tracking information because of that. I knew it was going to be unreliable, and I just told my parents that you couldn't track me, but they did their own snooping and like figured it out, and then of course it happened, the miscommunication. So
you know, we can put Jeff Bezos on the moon, but we can't figure out a good race tracking system.
I bet Jeff could. He's got the resources to help us out.
Do you really want him tracking you though?
He's already tracking us. We went to Whole Foods
fair.
yesterday. We never go to Whole Foods. We went there, and we do have an Amazon Prime account. And I told the lady, no, we don't have Amazon. And then I paid my credit card, and then she like automatically knew that I had Amazon Prime. And I was like, God darn it. Quit tracking me. They'll get you.
Yeah. Actually, we've been going to Whole Foods more because they just started making a new fancy kind of cereal called hazelnut pillows. And they're miniature pillows that are full of Nutella. And I usually don't like to endorse foods because I feel like it's hugely personal, but everyone needs hazelnut pillows in their life. It's just a fact.
I think they're
it's a proven nutrition strategy.
They're
tiny pillows full of chocolate. It's so good.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
They're so good. Because like that's the only like I feel like for me, the only amounts of Nutella I'm able to have are like a bit with breakfast, or it's an entire jar.
You like
It's
chocolate. You like chocolate a lot. I'm not as much of a chocolate person.
What I'm hearing is mini Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, they're like tiny Pop-Tarts, but they're like gooey on the inside. So I mean, I guess like a Pop-Tart is. Yeah, and they have berry ones too. So
the
there's
hazelnut one is
pillows.
better than than the berry one.
We've already tried multiple kinds.
Yeah, if you want to pay $4 for cereal,
this is worth it. I bought 3 boxes. Also, I think the serving size is really off.
Well, they all are, especially if you're an athlete who's eating, 500 to 700 calories every single morning before you run. You go through a box of cereal between 2 people in like 2 days.
We
really.
eat like we split a box of cereal every
No,
morning.
we don't. That's ridiculous. Every 2 to 3 days, we will eat a box of cereal. Yeah,
every other day.
That's what happens when you're training. You have to eat. You're not eating.
Those glycogen stores are.
They have to be full. And Coach Kylie gave Zoe the endorsement on eating.
Yeah,
those kind of cereals.
Exactly. Kylie said, whatever, like however you can eat the most readily available carbohydrates, go for it. And I was like, heck yeah, Cinnamon Toast Crunch and hazelnut pillows.
I was very skeptical of that.
Yeah.
I've since been converted. Yeah. Yeah. A lot less oatmeal now. A lot more pillows.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, my body just like it runs. It's what I was like primed to run off of was like upscale children's cereal.
I just saw Drew's comment about Jeff watching our call. Oh boy.
I think that if everybody could understand that like ultra marathoning meant that you got to eat a lot, there'd be so many more ultra marathoners. They'd be like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna throw up and maybe pee my pants and hurt all the time, but I get to eat tater tots whenever I want and pizza whenever I want. Sign me up.
Yeah, and like, hear me out. You've never run while drinking ramen out of your friend's hand. So
you have. I saw you run while drinking some kind of noodle soup at Leadville.
Yep. Yeah.
Didn't go very well.
Well, I won't blame the soup for that.
No, I'm all about the gels. That's my go-to.
Actually, I thought the ramen was pretty great because you get the like it was working.
The broth.
For me. Yeah.
Salty broth. A lot of
Well,
sodium.
it came with noodles too. So like you could basically just like, I don't know, it's like eating an oyster. It was just like I wasn't chewing at any point. I was just like whole swallowing noodles. It's an excellent advertisement for ultra running.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically you just kind of get to go and go aid station to aid station and
I'm not saying I'm like a better
foods.
athlete than Shaq, but could Shaq do that?
Shaq could definitely eat more ramen than you. I'm just gonna go
while
out there and
running
say that.
though. Like if we were both competing
He's
at our
pretty fit.
potential,
He's pretty
who could
fit
eat
in
the
his
most
day.
ramen?
I'm still gonna go with Shaq.
I think I could out ramen Shaq.
I don't know. He's like 5 times your size.
If you adjust for weight, like percentage of body weight in ramen that you're able to consume while competing, I would win. Because I practice.
You're very competitive.
It's true.
You should tweet at Shaq as soon as you can.
I'm gonna tweet at Shaq as soon as we're done here.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, this is kind of how I feel like the conversation. This is like the most random conversation.
Things that you think about while you're running, and then you say them out loud on the Zoom call.
You're thinking about Shaq on your runs this weekend?
Sometimes he goes to Aspen.
Does he?
Yeah.
Huh.
He DJ'd there last year.
That's
right before the pandemic.
He did DJ set from Shaq. Did not go to that.
Didn't go to the Shaq DJ set. No.
Activities.
I think it started after our bedtime. There are not many good DJ sets before 8 p.m. It's just a fact. It's not like a matinee.
No.
Rager.
Mm.
I mean, in Aspen, sure you could find one, but
probably. Yeah, if you wanted to.
If you really were motivated.
Yeah. All right, we've got some interesting comments here. I have to ask.
Oh my God, Shaq has a song. Lil Jon is like my go-to for when I need to access a new level of self-belief, because if you just listen to all of the lyrics that he ever says, it's just like very positive. It's like, yeah, yeah.
That's
what?
Shaq?
No,
Shaq?
that's Lil Jon.
Oh, Lil Jon?
I have no idea what Shaq sounds like.
He creates the beats. He's the DJ.
So
He's
awesome.
The producer.
Wow, we are definitely cooking dinner to that song on repeat.
No. Maybe. I have to check it out. If Simon endorses it, I could be willing to give it a shot. Yeah.
There's like 5 lyrics to it. It's mostly about nodding your head. That's pretty much the MO of the song.
Okay, I think music when you're running, the less lyrics, the better. Because then I just kind of get like those like 4 words in my head, and then I just repeat them like over and over again for like several miles. I'll just listen to the same song. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, totally. I'll listen to, there's like some songs I have on my playlist like 8 times.
Right? Like the simpler the song almost is like, the easier it is to like, I don't know, make it work with how fast you're going, or like make it elicit like a
you don't need like
state,
like a folksy murder ballad that has like a plot to run to. Not trying to like get into character development on the long run. I just want Lil Jon.
When you guys are creating your playlist, do you purposely seek out music that's to a very specific like tempo or like beats per minute or beats per second or whatever?
Oh yeah, 180.
I just like Lil Jon and Lizzo.
No, you just kind of pick what you like.
Yeah.
It happens to all be around the same tempo though, I think, for running.
Yeah, I actually remembered reading, there's a story on NPR where they actually did a study on what people responded to when exercising to music. And it was less about the BPM than it was about their emotional relationship to the song and how inspiring they thought it was, which I found very interesting because TJ listens to music that to me is like, I can't imagine how he exercises. Like you listen to jazz sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was listening to Rye on my long run.
Yeah,
it was like
that's
perfect.
Crazy.
It was a lot slower than 180 beats.
But you find
minute.
inspirational and motivating.
Sometimes if you're gonna like do an easy run, you don't want upbeat music because that forces you to go too fast. You know,
you don't want to be going like
if you're like
pace.
a very audible person, you know, some people are like more visual, some people are more audible. I'm like a very audible person, so if I have like that stimulus from the music, I will kind of like follow that music. So like when I have a specific intention, like, oh, it's going to be 80 degrees at 10,000 feet on my run on Sunday and I have to do 20 miles, I am definitely picking music that's going to like make me go really slow so I don't like crash and burn by mile 10, you know, because if you go out too hot, the music's too pumping or whatever they say, then automatically, you know, you're going to like get that, you're going to have a bonk, you're going to be like tired at the end, you're not going to pace yourself well. So I think sometimes the music should like complement what you're doing. You know, if you're pushing like a hard workout and you want to, you know, motivate yourself, building that self-belief, trying to like get vulnerable with it, maybe do a little bit faster than you've done in the past, you know, picking it up a little bit, that, you know, motivational music or whatever, music with a good beat or something, or lyrics that you like that could be cool.
Yeah, I feel like that's I either am listening to like NPR and an audiobook or Little John, and there's like no in between.
I like can't do podcasts at all when I run. I'm almost exclusively completely stopped doing that. Only once every month, twice a month will I do it, because if it's too involved, like for example, Zoe was like, you've got to listen to this Brene Brown podcast on
the Little John of vulnerability
leadership stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to this on my long run. And it was like totally the wrong thing to listen to on like the wrong day to be running like a trail that I shouldn't have been on, that was way too steep and not fun. And it was like way too emotional. And I got like wrapped up in kind of her dialogue, and like my perceived effort just went like way up. And I felt horrible and like had to call the run early. And I blame it all on that podcast. Like it was exhausting to listen to all of the challenging content of that podcast that I had like no bandwidth to do the run.
Yeah.
So like and there's been a few like, oh my God, around the time of the election, there was some like scenario podcasts that you sent me about like what would happen if Trump, you know, refused to, you know, like leave office. And I was just like, that was just too mentally and emotionally exhausting to listen to. I was like, this can't happen. This, you know, like out on a long run, you don't want that. Like you need to just be engaged in the run, present in the run. A little bit of music is great. You know, I think sometimes even like if you run without music, it can be really nice. Yeah, forget the podcast. Doesn't work for me.
I'm all about it.
No. Yeah.
It's like the
podcasts
only way
are for
I could
slow
ever
runs. Simon says it.
Yeah, slow runs. Like I'm not trying to like tempo while listening to Brene Brown. It'd be epic though.
Yeah, maybe Chris is right. Maybe putting on a mentally stimulating, very engaging, tough content kind of podcast could really help build your mental toughness. And I think that there probably is something to that. And I've definitely we had a really great sports psychologist on the team early on when we first started Microcosm. And he, you know, one of his biggest tips for like mental toughness training and working through things that are really challenging was just like to completely elicit like difficult challenges during runs. I don't know, you know, running and workouts can be hard enough that sometimes I don't need to make them necessarily harder. You know, maybe once in a while.
We could like sit down, do our quarterly taxes, discuss like chore allocation, and then do the run. Just to make sure.
That would be, yeah. I mean, anybody who's ever had like an argument with their partner before doing their long run, you know how well those long runs usually go.
Not that great.
Like, no, they're definitely.
You're like, I could be really out here all day. It's fine.
Yeah. So
sorry, boy.
I would say it's the same thing as like with heat adaptation, as we've all talked about, like do your workouts in the coolest temperatures possible. Do your easy runs when it's hot, you know? So like maybe on the easy run, if you're feeling good, put on that like really intense podcast and, you know, like work through it. And maybe that will help you with your mental toughness. But like I wouldn't like add on an extra layer to like your 5 by 3 minute hills where you're like already nervous and like wondering if these things are gonna like make you a better athlete or not, or like whatever, all the psychology behind some of those really tough workouts that we prescribe. Whew,
I thought something that was interesting is that we were at lunch yesterday and you were talking about how you felt like your current training block was really helping you with self-belief. And I would love to hear more about that. Like what specific stimulus has helped you develop better self-belief, and like how can that potentially be applied to other athletes training as well?
That's interesting. Man, I've been doing this. I feel like I'm calling it like the self-belief training block.
Yeah, look out for anyone whose training plan runs out in the next few weeks.
You're in for it. Because the workouts are really hard. It's usually a 20 or 30-minute tempo followed by, like 6 to 8 minutes of stride work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like an uphill tempo followed by uphill strides or followed by flat strides with very little recovery time. And I feel like those workouts, they are meant to like force you into a vulnerable state. And then, at least for me, in my response to like the last 6 weeks of training has been like, oh wow, I can really recover very well after this, really tough tempo workout. And I'm able to like put down like really great times on my intervals. Like, wow, so this is like the formatting of the workouts, I guess, for me has been helping me to see something in my training that I couldn't see before.
So you go really intentionally, like you do a tempo, and that makes you're at threshold. So
yeah,
that puts stress on like all, your aerobic system. It makes your legs tired. Cardiovascularly, you'll be pretty taxed. And then I imagine you get a short recovery, and then you have to accelerate past that and then do work at intensity on tired legs and on a tired brain.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think, as an athlete when you've been working with my coach for almost 4 years, I've been, running consistently focused training since 2013, I think. So like, I don't know, I have a lot of running history at this point. And I think that one of my biggest issues for like doing really well at like from going from like, doing well at races to like leveling up is a matter of getting more comfortable being very uncomfortable. And it's not that I can't run at the effort levels, it's that my desire sometimes to be that uncomfortable is very minimal. Like I think this is something that we discuss in like greater terms. It's like I don't love a lot of stress, but stress is something that elicits, growth.
Not just elicits, is necessary for growth.
Right, sure. Yeah, totally. It is necessary for growth, right? It's like the thing that causes growth when you've had the proper amount of rest. So like having a specific build, and I don't know if I couldn't tell you if this was like the intention that my coach has, but this is like what I'm getting out of the current training.
Yeah.
Is like realizing that like my ability to be uncomfortable, and I can be really, really uncomfortable for a lot longer than I thought and then recover quite quickly, which is kind of helping me realize that I've probably been running most of my workouts way too easy for a long time and not going hard enough. And that's not something that a lot of athletes tend to do, but I tend to be a little bit more adverse to stress. Like I'm more of a kind of person who wants to be balanced. I don't want to, take more athletes than I can handle. I don't want to like do more mileage every week than I can handle. I don't want to like, I'm not always looking to like up. I'm more looking to be like content with where I'm at. And sometimes if you're too content with where you're at, then you don't progress, right? So you have to like have something that's going to push you to get to the next level. And I think, for me, that's this whole thing about, trying to be more comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Do you feel like what you've learned from this training block has affected how you approach life, or like has growth opportunities, like have accidental life tempos helped you embrace discomfort in your training more? like where do you feel like the growth is happening most? Like, and how do they affect each other?
I don't know. I think that there's actually, if I look at like the last 10 years of my life, quite a bit of like oscillation between that. Like I tend to have periods that are like acutely stressful with not enough rest, where I'll be pushing like with a lot of stuff at one time. And then I'll need to have the same equal parts rest after, where I just won't want to push, and that kind of like up and down cycle. I've seen that a lot in my younger days, which is kind of why I'm trying to like, I want to like ride more of that middle, something that I've been thinking about a lot more regularly in the last like 4 or 5 years, is to like, how do I, especially like how can you be a business owner and not have an overabundance of stress? How can you be a professional athlete who wants to compete and win races and ski at the highest level and not have too much stress? Like, how does it all work together? Well, for me, it's like, you have to be willing, having the willingness, and for me, it's mental and emotional willingness to go out there and suffer and push hard, but then pull back and get the rest that you need and not have to be up there pushing all the time. That's where the growth happens. It's not, if you have no, and for me, if I don't have the mental and emotional capacity to do the work, then I'm not going to get the adaptation, right? Like, I'm not going to go out there and run my workout hard enough to get the adaptation. When you get to a certain level of running or anything, you're looking for small percentages of increases. So like, you do have to like run that stride like 15 seconds, faster, or like you do have to push like 5 more minutes on that tempo, or whatever it is. Like, it can look very different for each person, but you have to follow that up with rest. And in order to get that 5 more minutes, to get that like extra 15 seconds, for me, I have to be in the right mindset, like mentally and emotionally. I have to be ready to engage in that. And I think because some certain parts of my past were very acutely stressful, and that wasn't always good for me, I sometimes feel a little adverse about that. And like, this kind of feels like psychoanalysis, but
you're teaching yourself to be okay with embracing
that's the
positive,
point.
helpful stress.
That's been the point of this training block. And I think like, actually like the last kind of year, there's a lot of newly emerging science on stress, and that our perceptions on stress really are kind of what makes stress adverse to the system, and what makes, how stress actually becomes part of this growth equation. It's really your mindset and your perspective around it. So if you're in a stressful situation and you tell yourself, this isn't good for me, this is hurting me, you have a biological response to that stress,
to the meta stress.
Yeah, you really do. And then you don't get the growth out of that. So I think, it's very mental for me. And this training is like helping me to realize, like, you have this extra bandwidth. It's there. It's been in you all the time, but you have to access it. How do you access it? Well, you have to, in order to be successful, like, I have to rest in order to access it. Yeah, that means not working 7 days a week anymore like I used to, that got me in a lot of trouble. And other unhealthy habits that I've had. Yeah.
I think the concept of you like taking a training block and not just being like, okay, so this training block, I'm going to try to get X result at the end of this, as it pertains to like a time in a race or a finish place at a race, and being like, okay, so this training block, I'm really going to work on recovery, for example, or this training block, I'm really going to work on stress reduction or stress management, and taking it a step beyond just running to incorporate some other things that make you a better runner. I mean, that's something I hadn't thought of before, but it's genius. And I love that you called that out.
Yeah, I feel like, self-belief, I feel like, is the biggest thing you can get from training that applies to most people. I think that looks really different for everyone, right? Like, something we talk about frequently is it's really hard when runners, and so many, I would say like 90% of the people that reach out are like, oh, I'm just a slow runner, yada, yada. And I really, that's hard for me, because I really don't care what pace people run. I care that they're willing to get faster. Like, I don't care where you start. I just care that you have some amount of curiosity to see what your potential is. And I feel like there's a lot of training blocks that we really try to intentionally maybe play, or at least I do, play with people's perception of what it means to be fast and really intentionally drill down into speed. I see, particularly with like ultra and trail athletes, a lot of people, and like I include myself in this category, feel drawn to that initially because it's a place where you can walk during races and there's not a lot of judgment attached to pace. And like value and pace are like not related at all. But I feel like it's really fun to take people who call themselves slow and make them run really fast, because then they realize that they are fast all along. The only reason that they maybe had a different perception is because they weren't specifically training it, or they were just like selling themselves short. And I think it's really, really fun to train people's weaknesses, because they get better. Like most people, it's not an actual weakness they have. It's just like they haven't practiced it, right? Like if I walked around calling myself like, oh, I'm really bad at flute, people would be like, well, that's dumb because you don't practice flute. Like, why would you even say that? Like, of course you're bad at it. Just, practice it and then see if you get better. And I feel like that's how a lot of athletes come into the program, is just not having done a lot of specific speed training. Or you can see it on the other side, and maybe people haven't done a lot of specific like distance oriented training, and they're like, well, I'm not an ultra runner. And I'm like, well, not yet, you haven't tried. Like, let's give it a try. If you do a year of speed work and you don't get faster, then like, sure, you win, I guess. But that's just never happened.
Yeah, I mean, obviously self-belief, it kind of is at the foundation of like everything, right? Like if the way that you perceive yourself and the way that you talk about yourself is very limiting, you're only going to be able to go so far in all that you do. And so like often athletes who feel deep down like there is no limit to how good they can get are going to be the most successful. And not everybody starts out with that kind of belief, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, really have that. Some people are continuing to develop that all the time. And so, running is a low stakes way of kind of building that self-belief and then translating that to other aspects of your life, which I think is quite powerful. Yeah, I think developing tolerances too, like I think a lot about marathon effort. That's like a big curiosity of mine. Like, how hard could I run a marathon on the road?
Sliding into Drew's DMs any minute
and
now.
I'm like, I think about it all the time. And like, even though I would prefer to run a marathon on the trails and whatnot, I've done a lot of like mid long runs at probably just below marathon effort, for me. And starting to realize like, oh wow, like, it's not really that you can't run at these effort levels. It's just that you have to build the tolerance. You trick your body and your mind into allowing you to sustain those efforts for longer and longer. And really it's the product of thousands of runs. I was looking at my Strava and I've had like 1,400 runs on Strava since I started using Strava. And like in 1,400 runs, I've gone from like running like a 9-hour 50-miler, very average, to running like an elite 50-mile time, US time, in like 4 years or 5. And that was the product of like 6 years of training, like really. So, you've got, and we talked about this a little bit last week, like that 500-day mark in the logs, like giving yourself permission to build those tolerances, those neuromuscular adaptation. All of that just takes time, right? And like over that time, you're getting more comfortable kind of running at faster efforts, becoming easier. You're using less oxygen to run at those effort levels. Your economy is getting better. Efficiency is getting better. Biomechanically, things are getting smoother. I think, and Chris, he asked a really good question. Like, is there a routine that you use to like get yourself kind of, I think about it as priming. How do you prime yourself for a workout? How do you set your intention? I do some diaphragmatic breath work and really work on my breathing, just try to feel like relaxed when I go into the effort. because I think the biggest thing that a lot of people who are athletic, who are getting into running, they're very good at forcing speed. And forcing speed isn't always the best way to
develop
speed. So I really think like about relaxing and trying to take those like warm-up miles, the 2 or 3 miles easy that you're doing before your warm-up, whether they're on trails, whether you're on roads or whatever, just super easy, very light. There is no thought in my mind as to the pace. I don't care about how the pace of those miles attributes to my overall pace for the run. Like those few miles are just there to help prime me for that workout. I might do, 4 by 15-second, very moderate strides just to warm the legs up, to get used to a little bit faster running before I do my intervals. And then from there, it's really easing into the workout, especially for, stuff that's higher intensity, anything at threshold or above, which is the majority of interval work anyways, is going to be in that zone 4 and approaching zone 5. Those threshold efforts, like I was describing, like last week I did like a 30-minute tempo uphill, and then I did 6 by 1 minute hills, like at max effort, essentially at max effort. And so like, not starting the 30-minute tempo with your best stuff, easing into it, building the speed as you go. And then, in that last 10 to 15 minutes, you're really pushing, that hard but sustainable effort and what's comfortable. And a great way to gauge whether your effort is, if you're dialing in that effort correctly or not, is if you're able to, how quickly you're able to recover, especially with those threshold efforts. Anything that's like around 1 hour effort, you should be able to technically, if you're doing 20 or 30 minutes or less at 1 hour effort, you should be able to recover within a couple minutes. And it's harder when you're going uphill, but you should be able to recover quickly. And if you're not, you're going too hard. The hardest part of those workouts is trying to do the hill work after, quite honestly, because you don't really realize, even with the fast recovery, you're like, oh damn, I think my heart rate is going up very quickly.
Hills are hard.
This is
hills never get
tough.
easier. Yeah, I feel like that's like something every athlete asks, like on day 20 of their log, they're like, when do hills feel easy? And I'm like, literally never, or at least not for me yet, or for anyone I know.
No, they feel harder and harder because you're able to just go faster and faster. Like the effort, I don't know. And then you look later and you're like, wow, I was so much faster, like over that terrain. Yeah. And like, that's where the benefit is. Of course, you can back off the effort and run very, very easy, like more like recovery or pure easy on a lot of the hill climbs. And maybe it can feel more sustainable. And I think that is always the right call on long runs and easy runs. But again, when you're pushing like your 30-second hills, your 20-second hills, or any of your workouts, those are always going to hurt.
Not like hurt,
in a good
but
way.
Like fun hurt.
Fun hurt.
Not
type
like
2 fun hurt.
Type 2 fun hurt.
Yeah.
Not like, I always, so before workouts, I used to get so anxious before workouts, like I would lose sleep. And it's because I was putting so much pressure on myself to like demonstrate growth and like demonstrate fitness. And I wasn't just allowing myself to like go out there and have whatever kind of day I was going to have. I had really unhealthy and specific expectations around like, it's going to feel this way and it's going to be this fast and it's going to look like this on Strava. And like, it's, like I felt like every workout I had to like PR something, like I would have to be getting faster. And that's just not how training blocks work, because as you accumulate more fatigue, like your performance metrics are just going to be different. And so you have, and so like I was racing my workouts a little too hard. And because of that, they became like this huge mental weight where I just like had a bunch of anxiety because it felt like a test every time. And then I was the only person that was like imposing that stress and imposing that pressure on myself, because in order for them to be effective training, you need to not be doing that. Like you need to just, like you should never exceed your 1 mile effort during a workout, like on a stride, sure, but not on a workout. And so like it should feel totally doable. It shouldn't feel like 100% easy, right? But I feel like also workouts can be a really great way to make sure that you really are keeping your easy days easy too. Because if you feel like you're going to the well during workouts, then that could also mean that, like, well, if your perception of hard is like full on, like, you know, explosive effort, then maybe what you think is easy is like almost close to threshold too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like easy should feel so easy. Like just so
I
chill.
really am pushing a lot of my athletes to think of it as a forever effort. Stop thinking about pace. Stop thinking about Strava, how your Strava is going to look when other people are scrolling on it. Just run. So
it'll look really good when you get 13,000
easy.
days.
Yeah. And like, well, it's going to look really good when you show up at your race and you crush it because
you're uninjured.
You were getting your aerobic adaptations in, and you know, you getting that kind of diligent practice done day after day. And it really makes a difference. You know, people who run the easy runs too hard all the time tend to not develop aerobically as well. You know, the science really shows that the two ways to improve the most, and there's a lot of different, you know, ways to the same place. But what science really shows us is that running in zone 1 and training in zone 4 to 5 periodically is what makes you better as a runner.
Yeah. And to address Annalise's question, or Annalise, we actually really, unless there are specific circumstances where an athlete would benefit more specifically from heart rate training, we typically discourage people from using heart rate monitors, because, and I can't stress this enough, but if you're getting your heart rate off your wrist, you need to stop that right now, because they are just not, like, I've put mine on my bike before and it's been like, oh, you're at like 140 and that's a bike. Like, there's no heartbeat, you know? So not that accurate is what I'm saying. And so don't use that. And you just have to, it's really important that you learn to trust yourself and learn to trust your own effort and learn to gauge that for yourself.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. You know, you can just get rid of your heart rate monitors now, because you yourself, you're a heart rate monitor. You have the ability to monitor your effort, and you need to learn to develop an understanding around your effort, especially for anybody here who wants to run more than like a 5K, because you've got to be able to, you know, sustain an effort that's going to work for you for the desired time that you're going to be out there. The heart rate data, you know, maybe outside of monitoring how quickly you recover after workouts, basically, like anytime you're moving, anytime there's heat involved, different weather, the variance in terrain types, all of these things are going to end up causing false readings on your heart rate monitors. So you can just, especially in these hot temps, you know, a lot of the athletes that I'm coaching who use the heart rate monitor, it was telling me I was in zone 4, zone 5 for my whole long run. I was like, but I don't really think you were, because you ran for 5 hours, you know, so that's probably inaccurate. So you really need to just hone in on your own effort.
Trust yourself, trust how you feel. Like, as an athlete, it is our number one goal is to coach people towards a better understanding of how they feel, not a better understanding of, you know, how to be on training peaks or whatever. Like, that's meaningless to us. We want athletes who are resilient and independent and know how to listen to their bodies, because that's a lot more valuable than like being able to open your Whoop app and being like, oh, well, the Whoop says I'm recovered, so this workout will be good. And it's like, well, do you feel recovered? Like, why? Like, you should be able to know that about yourself. And while occasionally having additional metrics like Whoop, or, you know, have that heart rate monitor, like, particularly, I would say the best circumstances to use heart rate training is if you feel like, if there's any concern of overtraining, if you're coming back from injury, coming back from like maybe having potentially flirted with overtraining or under recovery, or you're in a time of acute high stress and we need to limit you with outside technology. But I think the primary goal should be to learn more about yourself, not to learn more about what Sunto thinks about yourself.
Chris asked a really good question. If it's very hot, the heart rate monitor is indicating that you're in a higher heart rate zone, but your breathing seems easy. You know, where are you running easy? And I would say yes. You know,
only if it feels easy though. Like, breath isn't the only thing you're monitoring.
When I'm breathing easy, so it says it right there. And I think that's the number one indication. You know, can you speak in 3 to 4 sentences out loud? Especially when it's hot, your perceived effort's going to go up, up, up. And this is something that, you know, we were experiencing on our runs the last couple weekends on our long runs. That, you know, in the longer you're out there in the heat, your perceived effort starts to climb even more, right? So your breath rate might start to feel a little bit more rapid, a little bit more labored. Check in with yourself. 3 sentences conversational, if not 4 to be super safe. They don't have to be complex sentences, but you know, 4 words in each sentence. Can you have a bit of a conversation if you're out there running with somebody? I check in with myself all the time to make sure, and I'm not like, there's no one out there anyways, but like if there was somebody out there and they heard me talking to myself, it's totally cool. They'd know I was running conversational effort. I'm hitting my easy pace. And that's really what you want. I think a lot of this does relate back to your breathing, your breath rate. If your breath rate is elevated, you're probably not going to be able to speak. So, you know, being in that like easy breathing, that has a lot to do with like the tension you're holding in your body, your posture out there, the lightness and ease of your strides, and all of that. And I think, you know, and I might be a little bit more of a coach that wants to coach people based on their breath and have them learn to monitor that breathing and develop an awareness around it, because I have a background in those kind of things. So to me, that makes sense and is very correlated. Other coaches may have other ways, you know, pure conversational, but that's always the best way to do it. Like ease of breath means ease of tension in the body, means ease of stride. So I would really, really recommend, like, if perceived effort's going up because of the heat, try to get back to as easy of breathing as you can and lighten that stride up. And even like, this is something that like Zoe and I were talking about on Sunday after both of our long runs. It's like, it was super hot. We were running really slow, and it's frustrating a little bit, and try not to get frustrated at yourself about having to be out there longer. Just know that going easier when it's hot is going to eventually help you to adapt better to the heat. It's going to allow you to still have aerobic adaptation, provoke aerobic adaptation out there, because it's very easy to get into zone 3 or zone 4 and then be running too hard and not really be getting any of like, and angiogenesis isn't happening, and those aerobic adaptations aren't happening when you're in zone 3 and above. I hope that is clear or makes sense. Please let me know if it's not. I'll try to better explain.
Run easy, and if you have questions about whether or not you're running easy enough, that probably means you're not running easy enough.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, there's no shame in really, really, really running easy. You know, like you almost can't run too easy. Even for the best runners like Kipchoge, he runs a lot of runs at like 8:40, 9-minute pace. And that dude, he's running under 5-minute miles for a marathon. You know, that's,
he like beats my stride pace
for a whole marathon. Mine too. You know, it's insane, mind blown. And he does his runs at a ridiculously slow effort for him. So that's how you develop the aerobic system. That's how you deal with the heat better. And a lot
that's
of
how you reduce impact on your body while still optimizing neuromuscular efficiency. She eating my sweater again.
Yeah. I think so much of this is really like mental. And I remember when I, you know, was starting to like compete very well at races, beach, you know, in contention for wins and things like that. And I started to think about my easy pace more on runs, and started to feel like, oh, I needed to like have this easy pace that was like a reflection of my like status as an athlete. So it needed to always be like fast, fast, fast. And so, you know, the sooner you can try to reinforce with yourself that don't worry about the data, don't get trapped in that Strava mindset of like having to hammer your runs. The sooner you do that and you kind of work the mental side of that training, I think the easier it is for you to like loosen your grip on the metrics in your runs, and feeling like you need to PR all the time, or like you need to constantly be leveling up, right? Because like the leveling up really should take place at your race. The workout and the long run, it's not like this forum for you to prove that you're fit, that you're an athlete, that your training is worth something. It's those runs are specifically meant to elicit growth, and to build fitness, not to prove it. And I think that, it's often athletes who really are engaged in the process and want to level up and get better sometimes confuse those things.
Yeah, they'll go looking towards their training or long runs or workouts as like each one is a referendum on who they are as an athlete. And because of that, they put pressure on those specific days. They overdo the effort level, and then they're actually undermining their own progress.
Yeah.
Something that's also good to point out too is that the term easy doesn't necessarily mean a pace. It's an effort, just like so reference the effort guide, I guess, at the bottom of your logs, which has been super helpful. But easy can change from day to day. Like you go out one day and say easy pace is like running 10-minute miles. It could be 9 minutes the next day, and it could be, whoa, sorry, baby. And it could be 12 minutes the next. It's just easy isn't a pace. Disassociate the two from one another.
Oh,
yeah. Thank you.
Exactly,
Drew. Yeah. And Chris has a follow-up question kind of about the heart rate stuff. Yes. I mean, your heart rate is going to go up as a result of it being hotter, right? The monitor still might not be accurate. Again, like if your heart rate's going up, your breath rate's going to go up too. So, I would, again, in that situation, like try to back off, right? Because if you're becoming elevated out there, you're not going to get that aerobic stimulus. And there are, of course, times when in a long run you're going to be running at a higher intensity, whether you have prescribed effort to push over hills or tempo work or speed work in a long run. We definitely want to be focused and have that higher heart rate and that higher breath rate during those, intentional moments. But outside of that, just like dropping back to that effort, that's just so important. Just, all right, I'm going to relax. I'm going to run easy. No big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Bye, Drew.
Yeah. So, bye, Drew. Yeah. Really great questions, Chris. Thanks. I really appreciate that. I hope, did we miss any
I don't think
questions?
So. Venga Boys for intervals. Yes.
I don't know who the Venga Boys are.
It's that one song about the bus, the Venga bus.
Venga Bus?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that an old song?
It's older.
Like from the 90s?
Maybe like turn of the century.
Huh. I'm not very into pop culture. Sorry.
He runs to jazz.
Yeah, cool. Well, maybe we've kind of reached our natural end to this conversation, but I'm really glad that we got to talk about perceived effort, and workouts and self-belief
and heat,
all of that.
All the good stuff.
Gosh,
just the greatest hits.
Heat training has been a real topic of late. I would just continue to recommend that you guys do your easy runs really easy as you adapt to the heat. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to just back that effort way, way, way off.
Yeah.
And make sure you do your workouts when it's as cool out as possible, because we don't need to double down on, tough environmental factors on a workout that's already going to be difficult. And and on top of that, no need for a mentally and emotionally stimulating podcast either on a tough workout day.
It's okay to go easy on yourself.
But if that's your jam,
okay thing.
If that's your thing, I support it, I guess, as long as it doesn't overflow the stress bucket. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. We'll see you on Friday.
Bye guys.
Have a good night. Bye.